The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. I stood there at 2 in the morning staring at the dent in my Camaro's hood, wondering when my life became a country song without the charm. My wife Andrea was upstairs, probably texting someone who wasn't me. Again. "Nate, you better fix that mess before the party tomorrow," she called down. Not honey or babe, just Nate. Like I was the help she couldn't fire yet. I took another swig of beer and laughed. Party. Right. More like a parade of her friends coming to judge our house and gossip about whose husband makes more money. I was about as excited as a root canal. The house cleaning party was Andrea's brilliant idea. Pre-baby prep, she called it, though we'd been trying for 2 years with zero luck. Maybe God had better sense than we did. I grabbed my tools and started working on the dent. Physical labor helped me think, and I had plenty to think about. Like why my wife of 8 years treated me like a walking ATM with attachment issues, or why she laughed at her phone more than she laughed at anything I said. The next morning, Andrea stomped around the kitchen in her designer workout clothes, barking orders like a drill sergeant with a yoga mat. The bathroom needs scrubbing, the guest room needs vacuuming, and for God's sake, hide your beer bottles before Britt gets here. "Yes, ma'am." I saluted her with my coffee mug. "Anything else, boss?" She shot me a look that could freeze hell. "Don't start with me, Nate. This is important." Important to who? I wondered. But I kept my mouth shut and started cleaning. 8 years of marriage teaches you when to pick your battles. Britt showed up first, naturally. She was Andrea's best friend and biggest enabler, a recently divorced HR manager who treated gossip like currency. Behind her came Marissa, Andrea's cousin and aspiring Instagram influencer who filmed everything for content. "Oh my God, Andrea, this place looks amazing," Britt squealed, phone already out and recording. "You're so lucky to have such a handy husband." Handy. Right. I was handy when they needed something fixed, invisible when they didn't. "Nate does what he can," Andrea said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Though sometimes I wonder if he's really cut out for family life." The words hit me like a cold slap. I was standing right there holding a vacuum cleaner like some kind of domestic prop, but they talked about me like I was furniture. "Some men just aren't built for responsibility," Marissa added, still filming. "But hey, at least he tries, right?" I wanted to tell them exactly what I thought about their little commentary, but instead I smiled and nodded. Let them think I was harmless. People underestimate harmless guys, and that's often their biggest mistake. The afternoon dragged on with more of the same. Andrea's friends drank wine and criticized everything from our furniture to our neighborhood while I played the role of helpful husband. But I was listening, always listening. "So how's your workout routine going?" Britt asked, with a knowing smirk. "Still seeing that trainer at the gym?" Andrea's cheeks turned pink. "Joel's been really helpful with my fitness goals." Joel. The name came up a lot lately, Andrea's workout partner, who apparently gave her so much motivation that she started going to the gym 5 times a week instead of her usual 0. "He sounds dedicated," Marissa giggled. "All those late-night training sessions?" Late-night training sessions? That was news to me. Andrea usually claimed she was working late at the office, not sweating it out with some fitness guru named Joel. "He's very hands-on with his approach," Andrea said, and the women burst into laughter like they'd shared the world's funniest inside joke. I filed that information away and kept vacuuming. Sometimes the best intelligence comes from people who think you're not smart enough to understand what they're really saying. After the guests left, Andrea was in full princess mode, criticizing my cleaning technique and complaining about everything I'd done wrong. Finally, she delivered the line that changed everything. "Maybe you're not cut out for family life, Nate. Maybe you should think about what you really want." I stared at her, this woman I'd loved and supported for 8 years, standing in our living room like she was doing me some kind of favor by letting me exist in her presence. "What I want," I said slowly, "is a wife who doesn't treat me like hired help in my own house." She laughed, actually laughed. "Your house? Last I checked, my salary pays most of the bills around here." True enough, Andrea made more money as a corporate consultant than I did running my small construction business. She never let me forget it either. "You're right," I said. "This is your house, your life, your rules." Something in my voice must have surprised her because she looked at me differently, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "Exactly. So maybe you should be more grateful that I let you stay. Let me stay. In the house where I fixed every broken thing, mowed every blade of grass, and paid half the mortgage despite making less money. Let me stay." I walked to the garage without another word. Sometimes the best response is silence. It makes people nervous when they can't predict what you're thinking. But I was thinking plenty. Mostly about Joel and those late-night training sessions Andrea had never mentioned to me. About the way her friends laughed like they knew secrets I didn't. About how my wife had just told me she was doing me a favor by letting me live in my own home. I found Andrea's gym bag in her car later that night. Inside was a hotel keycard for the Riverside Inn, men's cologne that definitely wasn't mine, and a receipt for dinner at Romano's. The fancy Italian place she always said was too expensive when I suggested it. The date on the receipt was last Tuesday. The same Tuesday she'd told me she had to work late for an important client presentation. I sat in my garage, holding the evidence of my wife's lies, and started laughing. Not funny laughing, the kind of laughing that comes when you realize you've been the punchline to a joke everyone else was in on. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal, my best friend and most trusted employee. "You okay, man? You seemed off today." "Just tired," I texted back. But I wasn't tired. I was awake for the first time in months. I spent the next 2 days following Andrea, using skills I'd learned in the Marines 20 years ago. Surveillance isn't hard when your target thinks you're too stupid to be suspicious. Andrea met Joel at the Riverside Inn on Wednesday. He was everything you'd expect from a guy who makes his living telling people to do more push-ups. Tall, tan, and probably spent more on hair products than I made in a week. But here's what really got me. Marissa was there too, filming them from across the parking lot. Not for her Instagram stories about coffee and motivation. She was documenting my wife's affair like it was some kind of twisted reality show. I watched them through my binoculars, these three people turning my marriage into their entertainment, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger. Anger is hot and stupid. This was calculation. That night, I used an old app from my construction security system to clone Andrea's phone. Amazing what technology can do these days. Within an hour, I was reading her text messages in real time. The conversation between Andrea and Britt was particularly illuminating. "Did you see Nate's face when we talked about Joel? LOL. He's so clueless. You could probably bring Joel to dinner and he'd think he was the cable guy. Don't give me ideas, though Joel says he's getting tired of sneaking around. Maybe it's time to upgrade husbands. You could do so much better. Working on it. Just need to figure out the logistics." Logistics. My wife was discussing the logistics of replacing me like I was a broken appliance. I screenshot everything and backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts. Then I kept reading. There were messages to Joel that made my stomach turn, not just because of the sexual content, but because of how she talked about me. Nate fell asleep watching TV again, like living with a tired old dog. "At least dogs are loyal," Joel replied. "Maybe it's time to put this one down." They thought they were so clever with their metaphors. Put this one down. Real subtle, Joel. But the most interesting conversation was between Andrea and someone named Tyler, Marissa's ex-boyfriend and apparently Andrea's other side piece. 2 wasn't enough. She needed 3 men in her life. 1 to pay the bills, 1 for the gym sessions, and 1 for whatever Tyler provided. "Nate's getting suspicious," Andrea texted Tyler. "Might need to speed up our timeline." "Timeline for what?" Tyler replied. "The thing we discussed. The documents are almost ready." Documents? What documents? I spent Thursday night going through Andrea's laptop while she was at her book club, which I now knew was code for meeting Tyler at his apartment. Her search history was a roadmap of betrayal. How to get spouse to sign power of attorney. Asset division in New York divorce. Can you transfer property without spouse knowing? She wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to steal everything I'd worked for and disappear. The house, the business, even the Camaro. Everything was going to be hers through some legal shell game I didn't understand yet. But I understood enough. My wife wasn't just a cheater, she was a thief, and her whole support network was in on it. Friday morning, Andrea announced she had a doctor's appointment. "Prenatal checkup," she said casually, like we'd been trying to get pregnant instead of living like roommates for the past year. "Just routine. Want me to come?" I asked, testing. "No need. Britt's driving me." Of course she was. I wondered if Joel and Tyler were coming too, just to make it a real party. But something about the doctor visit felt different. Maybe it was the way Andrea kept checking her phone, or how she'd started locking her laptop when she used to leave it open. Or maybe it was the fact that she was going to a doctor's office I'd never heard of, across town from our usual medical center. I decided to follow her one more time. The place was a small clinic in a strip mall, wedged between a tax office and a Chinese restaurant. Not exactly the kind of upscale medical facility Andrea usually preferred. I parked across the street and waited. She showed up with Joel, not Britt. They were holding hands walking into the building, and something about their body language looked wrong. Too casual for a couple about to hear their baby's heartbeat. Too relaxed for people who'd been sneaking around. I gave them 10 minutes, then walked inside. The waiting room was standard medical office. Beige walls, outdated magazines, and that antiseptic smell that makes you feel sick even when you're healthy. Andrea and Joel were sitting in the corner, talking in low voices and checking their phones. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. "I'm here for my wife's appointment, Andrea Thompson." The woman looked confused. "I don't have an Andrea Thompson on today's schedule." "Maybe it's under her maiden name? Andrea Reeves?" "No, sorry. We don't have any appointments for either of those names." I thanked her and stepped outside, my head spinning. If Andrea wasn't here for a doctor's appointment, what was she doing? I went back to my truck and waited. 20 minutes later, they came out looking satisfied, like people who'd just handled some important business. But it wasn't medical business. Joel kissed her goodbye in the parking lot. Not a quick peck, but the kind of kiss that said they weren't worried about being seen anymore. Then he got in his BMW and drove away. Andrea walked to her car, pulled out her phone, and made a call. "It's done," she said loud enough for me to hear through her open window. "Everything's signed and notarized. We can move forward with the next phase." Next phase, documents, legal papers. The pieces were starting to fit together. I followed her home and confronted her in our driveway. "How was the prenatal appointment?" "Fine," she said without looking at me. "Everything looks good." "That's weird because I called the clinic. They said you don't have an appointment there." She froze for a second, then recovered with the kind of smooth lying that comes from lots of practice. "I changed doctors. Women's privacy, Nate. You wouldn't understand." "Try me." "Look, I don't have time for your paranoid games right now. I have work to catch up on." She headed for the house, but I caught her arm, gently but firmly. "What did you sign today, Andrea?" The mask finally slipped. Her face went cold and calculating, like she was deciding whether to keep lying or just finish me off right there. "I signed papers that ensure I won't be trapped in this pathetic life forever. Papers that give me options you can't take away." "What kind of options?" She smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen on her face. "The kind that mean I don't need you anymore, Nate. For anything." She pulled free and walked into the house, leaving me standing in the driveway with a sick certainty that whatever she'd signed was designed to destroy me. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I packed a bag and left. Not forever, just until I could figure out what Andrea was planning and how to stop it. I checked into a motel across town and called Cal. "I need a favor," I told him. "A big one." "Name it." "I need you to take over the business, officially. Transfer everything into your name." "What's going on, Nate?" "My wife is trying to steal everything I own. I need to make sure she can't." Cal didn't ask for details. 20 years of friendship teaches you when questions can wait. "Consider it done." "What else?" "How do you feel about helping me get some revenge?" He laughed. "Brother, I've been waiting 8 years for you to ask that question." Saturday morning, I started my counterattack. First, I moved all my personal money out of our joint accounts. Not Andrea's salary money. I wasn't a thief, just my share, which was substantial since I'd been saving for years while she spent on designer everything. Then I sold Andrea's car. She'd bought it with money from our joint account, so technically I owned half of it. I posted it on Facebook Marketplace with the description, "Pre-owned luxury vehicle with cheater residue. Needs a good detailing but runs great." The car sold in 4 hours. The buyer even laughed when I explained why it was priced so low. "My ex did the same thing to me," he said. "Good for you, man." By Sunday, Andrea was calling me nonstop. I let every call go to voicemail. "Nate, what the hell did you do with my car? You bastard, you can't just disappear and steal our money. I'm calling the police if you don't call me back." The messages got progressively nastier, but I noticed something interesting. She never once asked me to come home. Never said she missed me or wanted to work things out. Just demands about money and property. Monday morning, Joel showed up at my construction site. My crew was pouring foundation for a new house, and we had a crowd of neighbors watching from the sidewalk. Monday morning entertainment in our small town. Joel strutted over wearing gym clothes and an attitude that probably worked great on people who hadn't spent 20 years doing physical labor for a living. "We need to talk," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do we?" I kept working, not even looking up from the concrete I was smoothing. "I don't remember scheduling an appointment. This is about Andrea." "What about her?" "She's under a lot of stress because of your little disappearing act. It needs to stop." I finally looked up at him. Joel was built, I'll give him that. Probably spent 2 hours a day maintaining those muscles. But gym muscles and work muscles are different things. Gym muscles look pretty. Work muscles get things done. "You seem pretty concerned about my wife's stress level," I said. "That's sweet of you." A few of my guys started smirking. They'd figured out what Joel didn't realize yet, that he'd walked into hostile territory and announced himself as the enemy. "Look, I know you're upset about the separation." "Separation?" I interrupted. "Who said anything about separation?" Joel's perfect tan went a little pale. "I mean, the temporary space you're taking." "Is that what Andrea called it? Temporary space?" The crowd of neighbors was getting bigger, and someone had started recording with their phone. Joel was beginning to realize this wasn't going the way he'd planned. "The point is," he said, trying to recover his authority, "Andrea needs you to stop playing games and act like an adult." "Games?" I laughed. "You want to talk about games? How about the game where you and my wife meet at hotels and pretend I'm too stupid to notice?" The crowd got very quiet. Joel's face went from tan to red to white in about 5 seconds. "I don't know what you think you know." "I know plenty, Joel. Want me to share with everyone here?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd collected. "How about this text where Andrea calls me a tired old dog, and you suggest putting me down? That's a fun one." Joel took a step back. "You can't just invade someone's privacy like that." "Privacy?" I started laughing again. "You're talking about privacy while screwing another man's wife? That's rich." Cal appeared beside me, along with 2 other guys from my crew. Not threatening, just present. "Everything okay, boss?" Cal asked. "Joel here was just telling me how I should handle my marriage problems. I think he's got some strong opinions on the subject." "That's so?" Cal looked Joel up and down like he was measuring him for something unpleasant. "You married, Joel?" "That's not..." "Simple question. You married?" "No." "Ever been married?" "No, but..." "So you're giving marriage advice based on what exactly? Your experience breaking up other people's marriages?" Joel looked around at the crowd, realizing he was outnumbered by about 20 to 1, and most of those people were holding tools. "This is ridiculous. I'm trying to help Andrea deal with an unstable situation." "Unstable?" I stepped closer to him. "You think I'm unstable, Joel?" "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" I smiled at him. "Why would there be trouble? We're just having a conversation about marriage and privacy and respect." I moved close enough that he had to look up at me. Gym muscles don't add height. "Here's the thing, Joel. My wife can make her own choices about who she wants to sleep with. That's between her and me. But you? You came to my workplace to threaten me about how I handle my personal business. That makes it my business with you." "I wasn't threatening." "What would you call it?" Joel glanced around at the crowd, the cameras, the guys with concrete-stained hands who were looking at him like he was something they'd scrape off their boots. "I was just trying to help Andrea." "Tell you what," I said. "Let me help you help Andrea." I walked over to Joel's BMW and looked inside. His gym bag was on the passenger seat. "Nice car. Must be nice to afford something like this on a trainer's salary. Don't touch my car." "Wouldn't dream of it. But that gym bag looks familiar. Didn't I see one just like it at the Riverside Inn last week?" Joel's face confirmed what I already knew. "Here's my advice, Joel. Take your helpful attitude and your BMW and your gym bag and go find someone else's marriage to fix. Because if I see you around my wife again, we're going to have a different kind of conversation. You can't tell me who I can and can't see." "You're right. I can't tell you anything, but I can show you." I picked up a handful of wet concrete and held it over his precious car. "Nate, don't what? Don't get concrete on your BMW? That would be a shame, wouldn't it?" The crowd was loving this. Someone whooped when I lifted the concrete higher. Okay, I get the message." "What message is that, Joel?" "Stay away from Andrea." "Close. The message is stop thinking you're smarter than everyone else. Stop thinking you can walk into my world and make demands. And stop underestimating the guy whose wife you're sleeping with." I let the concrete fall back into the mixer. "Now get out of here before I decide that my crew needs some entertainment." Joel practically ran to his car. As he drove away, the crowd started clapping. Someone yelled, "That's how you handle a home wrecker." But I wasn't done. Not even close. That afternoon, Marissa posted an Instagram story that was supposed to be cryptic but ended up being pure gold. She'd filmed herself having lunch with friends, complaining about family drama and how some people can't handle the truth about their relationships. But in her DMs, which I could still see through Andrea's phone, she got more specific with her followers. "OMG, you guys, my cousin's husband is having a total meltdown. He confronted Andrea's trainer at a construction site and made this huge scene. So embarrassing." "Wait, Andrea has a trainer?" someone replied. "Yeah, this guy Joel, super hot, but apparently not very smart, LOL. He tried to intimidate the husband and it totally backfired. Are they together? I mean, let's just say Andrea's been getting a lot of personal training lately." "What about the husband?" "Nate, he's been checked out for years. Andrea says he's basically just there to pay bills while she figures out her next move." "Next move?" "She's been working with lawyers about some kind of financial planning, something about protecting her assets if things get messy." Asset protection, financial planning. The pieces kept falling into place. But then Marissa made her crucial mistake. The funny part is, Joel thinks he's the only side guy. Andrea's been seeing this other guy, Tyler, too. It's like a soap opera. 2 minutes later, she realized what she'd posted and deleted everything. But screenshots are forever, and I had all of them. I spent Monday night putting together what lawyers call a comprehensive documentation package, and what I called enough evidence to bury all of them. Photos of Andrea and Joel at the hotel, screenshots of her text messages planning to steal my assets, records of her fake doctor appointments, Marissa's admission that Joel wasn't the only affair, financial records showing how Andrea had been moving money around without telling me. But the best part was what I found when I dug deeper into her laptop. Andrea had been working with a lawyer named Patricia Wells, setting up what they called divorce insurance, legal structures that would give her access to all our joint assets while protecting her individual wealth from any claims I might make. The plan was elegant and simple. Provoke me into filing for divorce while she controlled all the evidence, then use her higher salary and carefully staged domestic concerns to paint me as an unstable husband who couldn't be trusted with financial decisions. She'd already signed papers giving herself power of attorney over our joint accounts in case of emergency, the emergency being whatever lies she planned to tell about my mental state. Tuesday morning, Andrea made her first direct move. She showed up at my motel with Britt and another woman I didn't recognize, probably the lawyer. They looked like a delegation from the Ministry of Making Nate's life miserable. "We need to talk," Andrea announced, walking into my motel room without invitation. "Do we? Because last I checked, you told me you didn't need me for anything." "Don't be childish, Nate. This situation has gotten out of hand." "Which situation? The one where you've been planning to steal my business, or the one where you're sleeping with multiple guys while telling me we should try for a baby?" The lawyer, because it was definitely a lawyer, pulled out a folder of papers. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Patricia Wells. I represent your wife's interests in this matter. We're prepared to offer you a very generous settlement if you're willing to be reasonable about the separation process." "Separation? I thought we were talking about temporary space." "Given your recent behavior," Andrea said, "it's clear that you're not capable of handling our relationship like an adult. The incident at your workplace was completely unacceptable." "You mean when I told your boyfriend to stop harassing me at my job?" "I mean when you threatened him with violence in front of dozens of witnesses." I started laughing. "Violence? I held some concrete over his car. The only thing I threatened was his paint job." "Intimidation is still a form of assault," the lawyer said smoothly. "And we have video evidence of the entire incident." Of course they did. Marissa had probably sold them the footage for Instagram clout. "Here's what we're offering," the lawyer continued. "You sign these papers agreeing to an uncontested divorce, and Mrs. Thompson will allow you to keep your truck and your personal belongings. She'll also agree not to press charges for the intimidation incident or pursue claims against your business assets." I read through the papers. They were even more comprehensive than I'd expected. Not only would I lose the house, the joint accounts, and most of our shared property, but I'd also be agreeing to a restraining order that would keep me away from Andrea, her friends, her workplace, and anywhere else she decided I shouldn't be allowed. "This is generous?" I asked. "Considering your behavior, yes," Andrea said. "You should be grateful I'm not taking everything." "Everything like what?" "Like your business, like your savings account, like your precious car." She smiled that cruel smile again. I could make a very good case that you're emotionally unstable and financially irresponsible. Judges don't like men who threaten people and disappear without warning. Is that the story you're going with? I'm emotionally unstable? Are you not? You've been living in a motel, stalking me, harassing my friends, and making public scenes? That sounds pretty unstable to me. Britt nodded along like a good little backup dancer. Andrea's been worried about you for months, Nate. This whole thing is really just confirmation of what she's been seeing at home. What has she been seeing at home, Britt? Drinking, isolation, anger issues, classic signs of someone who can't handle adult responsibilities. I looked at these three women sitting in my motel room, trying to gaslight me into signing away everything I'd worked for, and something clicked. They'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was as stupid as they'd been telling each other I was for months. You know what? I said. You're absolutely right. I have been acting unstable lately. Paranoid, even. Andrea looked surprised. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. It's just that I kept thinking my wife was lying to me about where she was going and who she was seeing. I kept imagining that she was planning to steal my money and run off with some gym rat and his friend Tyler. The lawyer's pen stopped moving. Andrea's smile froze. I kept thinking she was meeting with lawyers to figure out how to make me look crazy so she could take everything I own. I even started believing that her cousin was filming our private business to use as evidence against me. Patricia Wells cleared her throat. Mr. Thompson, I think we should focus on... But then I realized something, I continued. I wasn't being paranoid at all, I was just paying attention. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of evidence I'd compiled. See, here's the thing about people who think they're smarter than everyone else. They get careless. They text each other about their schemes. They take pictures of their affairs. They brag to their friends about how they're going to destroy the stupid husband who never saw it coming. I showed them the screen. A text thread between Andrea and Patricia Wells, discussing neutralizing Nate's potential legal responses. That's privileged communication, the lawyer started. Between a wife and her lawyer, sure, but not when the wife forwards those conversations to her boyfriend for a good laugh. I swiped to the next screenshot. Andrea had sent Joel several of her conversations with the lawyer, including specific strategies for making me look unstable and dangerous. Oops, I said. Guess attorney-client privilege doesn't cover pillow talk with the side piece. Andrea was turning white. You can't use illegally obtained. Illegally obtained? You mean like cloning your phone without permission? Funny thing about that, I never cloned your phone, Andrea. I cloned our joint account's phone. The account that's in both our names. The account where you've been conducting all your business. That was a lie. But they didn't know it was a lie, and sometimes the best defense is a good bluff. You have no right, Britt started. Actually, Britt, I'm curious about your role in all this. You're an HR manager, right? I bet your company has policies about employees who help facilitate fraud and adultery. Her face went pale. And Patricia, I turned to the lawyer, I'm sure the state bar would be interested in reviewing your methods for gathering evidence against opposing parties, especially the part where you coached my wife on how to provoke me into situations that could be used against me in court. I had them. All three of them. They'd walked into my motel room expecting to intimidate a broken man into signing away his life, and instead, they'd found someone who'd been 3 steps ahead of them for weeks. Here's my counteroffer, I said. Andrea can have the divorce. She can even have the house. I never liked it anyway. But she doesn't get to steal my business. She doesn't get to keep the money she's already moved around without my knowledge. And she sure as hell doesn't get to walk away from this looking like the victim. You can't prove any, Andrea started. Can I? Want to test that theory in court? Because I've got hotel receipts, text messages, witness statements, and about 6 hours of audio recordings from our bedroom. All perfectly legal since it's my bedroom too. That last part was another bluff, but their faces told me it was a good one. What do you want? The lawyer asked quietly. I want to be left alone. I want my share of our joint assets. I want my wife and her friends to stop trying to make me the villain in their little soap opera. And I want everyone to remember that stupid doesn't mean blind. I stood up and walked to the door. You can see yourselves out. Take the papers with you. I won't be signing anything until my lawyer reviews Andrea's creative accounting over the past 6 months. After they left, I called Cal. How'd you like to help me throw a party? What kind of party? The kind where we invite everyone Andrea cares about and show them exactly who they've been supporting. Wednesday was the day everything came together. I spent the morning preparing for what I privately called the reckoning, a little gathering designed to give Andrea's social circle the truth they'd been missing. The venue was perfect. Romano's restaurant, the same place Andrea had been taking Joel for romantic dinners on my dime. I reserved the private dining room for a family celebration and sent invitations to everyone who mattered in Andrea's world. Her parents, her work colleagues, her book club, her gym friends. Even Joel, Tyler, and Marissa got invitations, though theirs were worded differently. Come support Andrea during a difficult time in her marriage. The guest list was 23 people who all thought they knew the story of poor Andrea Thompson and her unstable husband. I hired a guy to cater the event. Nothing fancy, just appetizers and wine. I wanted people comfortable and relaxed when I started my presentation. Andrea showed up looking confused and suspicious. She dressed for sympathy. Conservative outfit, minimal makeup, the kind of look that said, "I'm a victim, but I'm being brave." "What is this, Nate?" "This is our marriage counseling session. Public version." Her parents were there, looking as cold and disapproving as ever. Robert and Helen Reeves had never liked me much. I wasn't wealthy enough or sophisticated enough for their princess daughter. They'd been waiting 8 years for Andrea to upgrade to a better husband. "Nathaniel," Robert nodded at me. "Andrea said you've been having some difficulties adjusting to adult responsibilities." "Did she? That's interesting, because I've been thinking the same thing about her." Andrea's work friends clustered around her, offering support and shooting hostile looks in my direction. Joel lurked near the bar, probably wondering why he'd been invited to what was obviously some kind of ambush. Tyler hadn't shown up, which was smart of him. Marissa was filming everything, naturally. "Before we start," I announced to the room, "I want everyone to know that this gathering is being recorded for legal purposes. If you'd prefer not to be included, you can leave now." Nobody left. They were all too curious about what kind of spectacle I was planning to make of myself. "Great," I said. "Then let's talk about marriage." I clicked a remote and the room's big screen TV came to life. The first image was a wedding photo. Andrea and me, 8 years younger and genuinely happy. This is the story of how two people who loved each other turned into strangers sharing a mortgage. It's also the story of how some people think they can rewrite history if they're clever enough with their lies. "Nate, stop this right now," Andrea said. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I? Because I think I'm just getting started." The next slide was a timeline. Andrea's version versus reality. According to my wife, I'm an emotionally unstable man who drinks too much, works too little, and can't handle the responsibilities of marriage. She's been telling this story to everyone who will listen for months. I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements showing our joint account activity. Reality check number 1. I've contributed 63% of our household income over the past 3 years, despite making less base salary than Andrea. How? Because I work weekends, holidays, and overtime while she works banker's hours and takes spa days. Andrea's face was getting red. This is completely inappropriate. Reality check number 2. Another click brought up cell phone records. My wife claims I'm distant and uncommunicative, but according to Verizon, she's sent over 3,000 text messages to people who aren't me in the past 2 months. I've sent maybe 200 total, mostly work-related. Her work colleagues were starting to look uncomfortable. This wasn't the pity party they'd signed up for. Reality check number 3. Hotel receipts filled the screen. Andrea's been working late a lot recently. Really late. So late that she needs to stay at the Riverside Inn to be close to her projects. Joel tried to move toward the exit, but Cal and 2 other guys from my crew were casually blocking the doors. Not threatening, just present. The funny thing about hotel receipts, I continued, is they're time-stamped. So when Andrea told me she was at book club last Thursday at 7 p.m., she was actually checking into room 237 with someone who isn't her husband. "This is harassment," Andrea's mother said coldly. "Helen, call the police." "Actually, Helen, let's talk about harassment," I said. "Because your daughter has been working with a lawyer to steal my business assets while convincing everyone I'm mentally unstable. Is that the kind of behavior you raised her for?" I clicked again. Text messages between Andrea and her lawyer filled the screen, detailing strategies for provoking Nate into documented outbursts that can be used in divorce proceedings. Here's my personal favorite. If we can get him to react publicly to the Joel situation, we can use it to support the domestic instability claim. That's your daughter planning to manipulate me into giving her ammunition for court. The room was dead silent now. Even Marissa had stopped filming. "But wait, there's more," I clicked through more screenshots. Because apparently one affair wasn't enough excitement for Andrea. Everyone, meet Tyler Davidson, affair number 2. Photos of Andrea and Tyler at his apartment, leaving restaurants, sitting in his car outside our house while I was at work. Tyler's been a busy guy. He's the one who helped Andrea set up the power of attorney documents she had me sign last month. You know, the ones I thought were for refinancing the house, but actually gave her control over my business accounts. Now I had their attention. Financial fraud gets people's focus like nothing else. The beautiful part of this whole scheme was how simple it was. Andrea convinced me to sign papers updating our financial planning after we decided to try for a baby. Except we weren't actually trying for a baby. That was just her cover story for the secret doctor visits where she was meeting with Tyler to handle the legal paperwork. Joel was looking around the room like a trapped animal. Some of Andrea's friends were pulling out their phones, probably Googling the laws around conspiracy to commit fraud. Now, I could have handled all this privately. Could have just filed for divorce, split everything 50-50, and walked away. But Andrea made one crucial mistake. I clicked to the final slide. Screenshots of the group chat where Andrea, Britt, and Marissa had been laughing about their plan to destroy stupid Nate and celebrating how easy it would be to take everything from someone too dumb to see it coming. She made it personal. She turned my marriage into entertainment for her friends. She made mocking me a group activity. The silence in the room was so complete you could hear the air conditioning humming. "So here's what's going to happen next," I said. "Andrea is going to withdraw those fraudulent power of attorney documents. She's going to return every penny she transferred out of our joint accounts without authorization. She's going to sign an agreement stating that she committed adultery and attempted financial fraud, which will make our divorce very straightforward." "You can't force me to," Andrea started. "Can't I?" "Because Patricia Wells, your lawyer, is about to have some very uncomfortable conversations with the state bar about her creative approach to evidence gathering. And her law firm is going to be very interested in why she coached a client on how to commit document fraud." I looked around the room at all these people who'd thought they were coming to support Andrea against her unreasonable husband. "Everyone here helped make this possible. You all believed Andrea's sob story about being married to an unstable man without ever asking for my side. You supported her affairs because they fit your narrative about her being trapped with someone beneath her standards. Andrea's book club leader, a woman named Sarah who'd never spoken to me but had strong opinions about my character, looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you a lot of room to maneuver. While you were all gossiping about my failures as a husband, I was documenting every lie, every theft, every moment of mockery you thought I was too stupid to notice." I turned off the presentation and faced Andrea directly. "I loved you for 8 years. I would have worked with you to fix whatever was broken between us. But you decided I was easier to replace than to respect. Nate, please. No. We're done with please. You want a divorce? You'll get one. But you'll get it honestly, without stealing from me or lying about me or turning our marriage into a joke for your friends." I looked around the room one more time. For those of you who enabled this situation, congratulations. You helped destroy an 8-year marriage because it was more fun to believe in Andrea's victim story than to consider that maybe things aren't always what they seem. I walked toward the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Andrea? The baby story you've been telling people? In case anyone's wondering, my wife hasn't been pregnant at any point in the past 2 years. That was just another lie to make her affairs look more sympathetic." I left them sitting there in their expensive restaurant, staring at the evidence of their own cruelty and stupidity. But I wasn't done yet. Thursday morning brought the final confrontation I'd been avoiding, face-to-face with Joel and Tyler together. They'd been smart enough to meet at a neutral location, the parking lot of a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. What they hadn't been smart enough to do was check whether I'd been monitoring Andrea's communications when she set up the meeting. I arrived early and waited in my truck, watching them pace around Joel's BMW like caged animals. They were clearly trying to figure out how much trouble they were in and what their options were. When Andrea showed up looking exhausted and desperate, I decided it was time for our final conversation. I walked over to their little huddle, and all 3 of them looked at me like I was a ghost. "Planning your next move?" I asked conversationally. "Nate, we need to talk," Andrea said. "This has gotten completely out of hand." "Has it?" "Because from where I'm standing, everything's going exactly according to plan, your plan specifically." Joel stepped forward, apparently deciding he needed to assert some kind of alpha male dominance. Look, man, we're all adults here. We can work this out without anyone getting hurt. Getting hurt? I laughed. Joel, you've been sleeping with my wife and helping her steal my money? I think someone already got hurt. Nobody stole anything, Tyler said. He was skinnier than Joel, more nervous, clearly the brains of this particular operation. The documents Andrea signed were completely legal. Were they? Because my lawyer has some interesting questions about power of attorney papers that were notarized by someone who isn't actually a licensed notary public. Tyler's face went white. I never said I was. You never said you weren't either. Turns out that's a felony in New York. Impersonating a notary to commit document fraud. 5 to 10 years if they decide to prosecute. This is ridiculous, Andrea said, but her voice was shaking. You can't prove any of this. Andrea, honey, I've already proven all of it. The question now is what happens next. I pulled out my phone and showed them a number, the State Attorney General's fraud hotline. I've got 2 choices here. I can call this number and report attempted theft, document fraud, conspiracy, and a bunch of other charges that will tie all 3 of you up in court for the next 2 years. Or what? Joel asked. Or we handle this like adults. Really handle it. Not like the fake adult conversation you 3 were planning to have with me. I looked at each of them in turn. Andrea, you're going to file for divorce. Clean, simple, no fault. We split the assets we actually accumulated together, 50-50, fair and square. You don't get my business, you don't get to keep the money you moved around, and you don't get to play victim about how your unstable husband forced you into cheating. And if I don't, then Joel and Tyler go to prison for fraud, you go to prison as an accessory, and I still get the divorce. Plus, your parents get to see their daughter on the evening news as part of a financial crimes story. Joel was sweating now. Man, we never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You meant for it to go exactly this far. You just thought I'd be too stupid to figure it out. I turned to Tyler. You're going to return every document you illegally notarized. You're going to provide a signed statement admitting what you did and why. And you're going to stay away from my wife permanently. What if I refuse? Then you're going to find out how seriously the state of New York takes document fraud. Your choice. And me? Joel asked. You're going to disappear from Andrea's life. Completely. No more training sessions, no more hotel visits, no more anything. You're also going to pay me back for all the dinners at Romano's that Andrea charged to our joint credit card. That's extortion. No, Joel, that's consequences. Extortion would be if I demanded money for something that didn't happen. But you did eat those dinners. And Andrea did charge them to the account I helped pay for. So really, I'm just asking you to cover your own dating expenses. I put my phone away and looked at all 3 of them one more time. Here's what's going to happen right now. We're all going to walk away from this parking lot and pretend this conversation never happened. Tomorrow, Andrea files for divorce. Next week, Tyler provides his statement and returns the documents. Joel pays me back and disappears from both your lives. And if we do all that, Andrea asked, then I don't destroy you, I just divorce you. And if we don't? I smiled at her the way she'd smiled at me that day in our living room, when she told me I should be grateful she let me stay. Then you find out what happens when you underestimate someone for the last time. I walked back to my truck and drove away, leaving them to figure out their next move. Friday was quiet. Too quiet. I spent the day at the construction site, trying to focus on work while waiting for Andrea to make her choice. Cal kept asking if I was okay, and I kept telling him I was fine, but the truth was, I felt empty. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a parking lot ultimatum and a stack of legal documents. It wasn't how I'd imagined my life would turn out. Around 4 o'clock, my lawyer called. Nate, Andrea Thompson just filed for divorce. Clean, no fault, requesting equitable distribution of marital assets. No special claims, no domestic allegations, no demands for spousal support. That's good, right? That's exactly what you wanted. She also dropped off some documents that apparently need to be returned to you, something about incorrectly executed power of attorney papers. So Andrea had made her choice. The smart choice. Probably the only choice that wouldn't end with all of them in legal trouble they couldn't afford. But I still wasn't done. Saturday morning, I drove to the hospital where Andrea and I had gone for our actual medical appointments over the years. Not the fake clinic where she'd been meeting Tyler, but the real place where real doctors had told us real things about our real marriage. Dr. Patricia Williams had been our family physician for 6 years. She was the one who'd talked us through fertility issues, relationship stress, and all the normal problems that normal couples face when they're trying to build a life together. "Nate," she said when I walked into her office, "I was sorry to hear about you and Andrea. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay, Dr. Williams. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something." "Of course." "Andrea's been telling people we've been trying to get pregnant for the past 2 years. Is that medically accurate?" Dr. Williams looked confused. "Nate, you and Andrea haven't been in for fertility counseling in over 3 years. And when you stopped coming, she specifically told me that you'd decided to wait on having children." "She told you I decided to wait?" "She said you felt the timing wasn't right, financially and emotionally, that you wanted to focus on your business for a few more years before starting a family." I sat there processing this information. Not only had Andrea been lying to her friends about being pregnant, she'd been lying to me about wanting to get pregnant. And she'd been lying to our doctor about why we weren't trying. "Dr. Williams, in your medical opinion, if someone was actively trying to conceive, would birth control pills interfere with that process?" She looked at me strangely. "Of course. You can't get pregnant while taking birth control. That's the point. And if someone was taking birth control while telling their husband they wanted to have a baby, what would you call that?" "I'd call that complicated." "Nate, are you telling me Andrea's been taking birth control without your knowledge?" "I'm telling you I found a prescription bottle in her purse last month. Same month she suggested we try harder to get pregnant." Dr. Williams was quiet for a long moment. "Nate, I can't discuss Andrea's medical information without her consent, but I can tell you that deception about family planning is a serious issue in a marriage. Have you considered counseling?" "I don't think counseling is going to help at this point, Dr. Williams. But thank you for confirming what I suspected." I left the hospital with the final piece of the puzzle. Andrea hadn't just been cheating on me and stealing from me. She'd been lying about wanting children while secretly preventing pregnancy, probably because a baby would complicate her exit strategy. That afternoon, I called Andrea one last time. "We need to meet," I told her. "Nate, the divorce papers are filed. Can't we just let the lawyers handle everything from here? One more conversation, face to face. After that, you never have to see me again." She agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory, public place, plenty of witnesses if things went badly. When I walked in, she was already there, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen her. The past week had aged her, and for a moment I felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the birth control pills. "You look tired," I said, sitting across from her. "It's been a difficult week." "Has it? I imagine it's exhausting keeping track of all your lies." She sighed. "Nate, what do you want?" "I did what you asked. I filed for divorce. Tyler returned your documents. Joel agreed to your terms. Can't we just move on?" "I want to know about the birth control pills." Her face went completely blank. "What?" "The prescription I found in your purse. The one you've been taking while telling me we should try for a baby?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Andrea, I spoke to Dr. Williams yesterday. She confirmed you haven't been in for fertility counseling in 3 years. She also confirmed that you told her I was the one who wanted to wait on having children." "That's privileged medical information." "That's a lie, just like everything else you've told me for the past 2 years. Andrea stared at me across the table, and for the first time in our entire relationship, she looked truly defeated. "What do you want me to say, Nate?" "I want you to tell me the truth. Just once. Why did you do all this?" She was quiet for a long moment, then she looked up at me with something that might have been honesty. "Because I could. That's it? You made it easy, Nate. You trusted me completely. You never questioned anything I told you. You never checked up on me or demanded explanations or made me account for my time. You just believed everything." "And that was a problem?" "It was boring. Do you know how boring it is to be married to someone who never fights back? Someone who just accepts whatever you give them and asks for nothing in return?" I stared at her, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 8 years, and realized I'd never known her at all. "So you decided to see how much you could get away with?" "At first, yes. Joel was just excitement, something different, someone who challenged me. And Tyler? Tyler was practical. I knew I wanted out of the marriage, but I didn't want to lose everything I'd worked for. He helped me figure out how to protect my assets. By stealing mine. By securing my future. I make more money than you, Nate. Why should I be punished financially just because I fell out of love? You could have just asked for a divorce." And given up half of everything? Why would I do that when I could keep it all? I looked at this person across from me, this stranger wearing my wife's face, and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even disappointment. Just emptiness. You know what the funny thing is, Andrea? What? If you'd just been honest with me 2 years ago, I would have given you anything you wanted. The house, the savings, half the business, whatever it took to make you happy. But now? Now you get exactly what the law says you deserve. Nothing more, nothing less. I stood up to leave, then stopped and looked back at her. For what it's worth, Andrea, you were wrong about one thing. What's that? I did fight back. I just waited until I could win. I walked out of the coffee shop and never saw her again. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Andrea got half our joint assets, which was fair, and I kept my business, which was justice. Joel moved to another town after his gym fired him for conduct unbecoming a fitness professional. Apparently, word had gotten around about his approach to client relationships. Tyler faced fraud charges, but plea bargained down to community service and probation. Marissa's Instagram account got suspended after too many people reported her for posting private information without consent. Britt transferred to another HR department after her boss received an anonymous tip about her involvement in facilitating adultery and fraud. Andrea moved to California to start fresh. Last I heard, she was working for a consulting firm in San Diego and dating a plastic surgeon she met on a dating app. I rebuilt my life slowly. New apartment, new routines, new goals. Cal and I expanded the construction business, and we're doing better than ever. Turns out, when you're not supporting someone else's secret lifestyle, you have a lot more money to invest in your future. Some people asked if I was bitter about the whole thing, if I regretted how it ended. The truth is, I learned something important about myself during those 3 months of planning and executing my revenge. I'm not the kind of man who gets destroyed quietly. Andrea was right about one thing. I had been too trusting, too passive, too willing to accept whatever scraps of affection and respect she threw my way. But she was wrong about why. It wasn't because I was weak or stupid or boring. It was because I loved her enough to give her the benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt was overwhelming. When that love finally died, not all at once, but slowly, over the course of those weeks when I watched her mock me and scheme against me and plan my destruction like it was a fun puzzle to solve, something harder took its place. Not hatred. Hatred would have been easier, cleaner, more dramatic. Just a cold, practical determination to make sure that people who underestimate me never get the chance to do it twice. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Dr. Patricia Williams at the grocery store. She asked how I was doing, and I told her I was fine. "I'm glad," she said. "You know, Nate, in 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot of couples go through difficult times. The ones who survive are usually the ones who remember that marriage is supposed to be a partnership, not a competition. What about the ones who don't survive? They're usually the ones where someone decided winning was more important than being honest." I thought about that conversation as I drove home to my small apartment, my simple life, my quiet evenings without drama or schemes or lies. Andrea had won her freedom. Joel had won his excitement. Tyler had won his experience in creative legal solutions. Marissa had won her content. Britt had won her gossip material. But I'd won something better. The knowledge that when someone tries to destroy you, you don't have to let them. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's just refusing to lose. The last I heard, Andrea was engaged to the plastic surgeon. I hope they're happy together. I hope she's learned to value honesty in a relationship, though I doubt it. As for me, I'm dating a woman named Sarah who runs a small bookstore downtown. She thinks I'm interesting and funny and worth listening to when I talk. She doesn't check her phone when we're having dinner. She doesn't have any secret training sessions or mysterious late meetings. And when I told her the story of my divorce, the whole story, start to finish, she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a woman's eyes for years: respect. "You handled that well," she said. "Did I? You could have destroyed them all completely, but you didn't. You just stopped letting them destroy you." She was right. In the end, that was all the revenge I needed. Refusing to be the victim they'd planned for me to be. Andrea thought she was so smart, so sophisticated, so much better than the boring husband who paid the bills and fixed what was broken and loved her without asking for proof that he was worth loving back. She thought I was too simple to understand her complex schemes, too trusting to see her obvious lies, too weak to fight back when she finally revealed what she really thought of me. She was wrong about all of it. But the best part, the part that makes me smile sometimes when I'm working on a construction site or having coffee with Sarah or just living my quiet, honest life, is that Andrea will spend the rest of her life wondering if the next man she underestimates might be just as dangerous as the last one. Because the thing about people who think they're smarter than everyone else is that they never learn. They just find new victims and start the game all over again. But they'll always remember the one who didn't play by their rules, the one who fought back, the one who won.